Boy, it's windy today. I mean, the wind's blowing 20, 25, 30 mile an hour at times. Really a gusty day. We're just out here kind of looking around, scouting around a little bit. Season's getting ready to open up and seeing if we can locate any. What do you do on windy days? Well, that's a good question that I just got recently from one of our viewers. What do you do on windy days when the wind is so bad that you just can't hear anything? So what do you do? Do you just go back to the restaurant and just say, well, all right, bad day, let's just stay home? Or do you stick it out and maybe fill your turkey tag on a windy day? Well, probably plan B would be a little bit better because, you know, a lot of guys, if you work a full-time job, you know, you have to hunt when you can pretty well, you know, hunt. So if it's windy days, you just got to fight the weather. So what do you do on windy days? Well, windy days can be really tough because one thing is it's hard to hear turkeys gobbling and answering you. But there's more times than not that turkeys will respond to you and they'll gobble, but you can't hear them because you're up on a bluff or you're up on top where it's so windy, and they hear you and they're gobbling, but you can't hear them. There's been a lot of times I've watched turkeys out in the open field and be windy and be sitting there and be calling to them and watch their neck stretch out and be gobbling. You can't hear them. I've done it, you know. So what do? Well, you know, first thing, it's kind of like old deer hunters, you know, when the wind's blowing, you want to get where the wind ain't. Well, turkeys the same way. You know, turkeys don't like wind either. One thing, it takes away one of their senses, and that's their hearing. It's hard to hear, so they want to get down to where they have full advantage of predators and everything else, so you want to get to where the wind isn't. So if the wind is really howling, I guarantee you, we can go up here on top where we just came from, and it's just like, you know, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz. You might have to go just grab a hold of a tree. So what do? Well, you get down here in these little bowls and these little hollers and these little cuts like this, and that's where you kind of want to start. You want to get to where the wind ain't. That way you can hear. Get down these little hollers like this, and these little cut and drainages to where the wind isn't so bad, and the turkeys, you know, as I mentioned, they like to get where the wind isn't. So that's where you want to get. What calls do you use? Probably my favorite of all to use in windy days is a box call. That's why I think every turkey hunter needs a good box call. Or a friction call. Slate call is good because it cuts the wind a little bit better. It's a more loud call. I try to stay away from my diaphragms until I get a turkey up close, then I'll switch over to one to where he can hear. But as far as calling on windy days, just nothing beats a box call. So what I'll do is I'll just take me a box call and I'll just kind of walk through these little creek drainages and these little hollers, and I'll just pretty well just call as I go along, find me a tree set up to where I know turkeys are normally go to, and I just sit there and call. In fact, last year, 2011 season, the first turkey I harvested was on a day just like this. The wind was blowing 25, 30 mile an hour. I mean, it was a day when no turkey hunter would be out in the woods. I set up where I knew this property, I knew turkeys always went to anyway. And I've always said, if I knew wherever turkey was going to be every day, I wouldn't even use a call. I just go where they's at. You want to get where turkeys are naturally going to go to anyway. So if you know your property, you kind of know you kind of already know where turkeys normally are using anyway. So I got to where they were coming out in this little green field feeding, and I knew that they were scratching around there during the day. I set up in a little holler. I got away from the top of the ridge where I was at. I got down the holler away from the wind, and I just took my box call. I set up against a big old tree and just sat there, and every, you know, 15, 20 minutes, I just give some soft calling. Just like that. I never heard a gobbler. Never heard him gobble, but I looked over, and I was sitting there about 45 minutes, looked over to my left, and there he was, like 60 yards, full strut. He come in silent on me. Now, all that time, he had been hearing that box call. He'd been hearing me calling, but I never heard him if he had gobbled at all. And, you know, he was the only gobbler that I seen that whole day. I called him in, I switched, and so when he was down there, I switched over to my diaphragm, got him in to about 20 yards and was able to harvest him. So on windy days, I like to try to stay with a loud call, a friction call or a box call. Don't get out there and just start going crazy and hit these old loud calls unless you're cutting and running. But once you set up, just kind of get soft with your box call. Something like that, or a cluck. Every once in a while, just do that. More times than not, there's a turkey or a gobbler that will be close enough to you. He may not gobble, you may not hear him, but he will respond. And so you may just find that old bird on a windy day that is going to come in and give you a good shot. So box calls, slate calls, try to stay away from your diaphragms. And I guarantee you something, you might just put your tag on an old windy day gobbler.